No worries. It's one of the last sessions that we have today, and then we have a networking session, which will be nice. Thanks. I wanted to say a huge thanks to Mariusz and everyone who organized the conference. It was super nice. If we can give the team huge round of applause. As always, very nice community here. Big kudos to the team who organized that. I want to complement what was Mariusz was saying about privacy sandbox, and I will be talking more about first-party data, which actually complements privacy sandbox. You can start using it already today. No need to wait for a long time for a privacy sandbox and then catching up with what you can do in terms of keeping up your eCPMs, keeping up your monetization, changing your strategies. You can start doing it now. So in this session, I would like to explore a bit more on first-party data and discuss the ways how you can optimize your app and drive it towards profitability using the first-party data. So I'm Roman. I'm mobile apps consultant at Google. I'm covering AdMob at CE and leading my team's Firebase and analytics practices. I've been in conversation with a huge chunk of publishers from CE, and where we were discussing AdMob Firebase. So super nice to see so many familiar faces. Very happy to meet new people, so don't hesitate to reach out to me afterwards. And I'm super excited to have this opportunity to present you this topic, so let's get started. I want to start with a few areas. Overall, the agenda for today is to discuss quickly what's the first-party data, so we align on that. Then I want to touch on utilizing Google Analytics as your first-party data hub. You might use your own, but in general, I will be sharing frameworks on the example of Google Analytics Firebase. If you have some other sources, please feel free to use them. Just make sure you use the framework that I share, and discuss how to activate your first-party data with practical recipes for profitability. So let's get started. What's the first-party data? First-party data, I would say, could be defined as three pillars: information that you can get directly from the users, in-app behavior interactions that you also can collect, and then off-app information. And there are small bunches of these kind of pillars that you might utilize in order to get most of this first-party data. And we will discuss how best to use Google Analytics and Firebase to achieve that and to utilize everything you see here, or how to collect that one as well. First of all, yeah, the behavioral and contextual data collected by Google Analytics is exactly your first-party data. But as you all know, this is the only part of the story. It essentially boils down to combining behavioral and contextual data with earn and spend data. So basically, because only after then you are able, when you are able to collect all of this holistic information from your, let's say, different verticals: monetization, user acquisition, in-app monetization. Only then you have the holistic approach, and only then you can get the most insights out of it. So let's take a closer look on those integration into detail. First of all, very important to understand your revenue with Google Analytics, for example, and that's why you have to collect holistic. Let's say you should have holistic approach on revenue collection. You should not miss any single network. You should not miss any single piece of revenue, and you should collect everything in one place, so you know every single user revenue stream, and you should have it centralized. It's super easy to do with AdMob, with any other platform, and Google Analytics for Firebase SDK. It happens automatically. I wouldn't just spend much time on it, how you can link that. Then on the other side of the story, there is spend data, user acquisition data. It shares conversion events with Google Ads for bidding and enables various bidding strategies that rely on data. On one of the easiest ways to utilize this integration is running app campaigns for install I wouldn't share most of it. You've heard lots of stories about this kind of different campaigns, and there are really pros in the audience who shared lots of insights when to use with what kind of campaigns. But in general, we have multiples of these campaigns, and in return, so basically when you acquire those users from this specific campaigns, you return that information to the Google Analytics, and we, in this case, get the holistic approach. But there is more than following a siloed approach. Basically, what I want to say here, while using the additional resources like Firebase, you can get additional insights out of this user acquisition, analytics, and app monetization and ads monetization pillars. Let's start with the segmentation. When you collect all of this data, it helps you to segment your users based on those acquisition campaigns, behaviors, demographics, and first-party other data that you have. Then you are able to personalize it. So this is the pillar where you can basically target and approach performance of your apps with specific insights that you get from Firebase. And then you can reiterate, and with those collected events information, you can transfer this information to user acquisition campaigns and then get more of the profits from the Google Ads while filling this the Google Ads with more data that you already have. I want to introduce a few other concepts here. They will be important prior. I'll get more to the practical session. I believe most of you already knows those. But I want to just emphasize how important those two pillars of Firebase. If you have your own, that's fine. But Firebase Remote Config, which basically helps you to send signals, change apps behavior and appearance for different segments, for different user bases, different cohorts, and it doesn't require any app updates, and that's why it helps you to roll out different kind of strategy for different cohorts in a seamless way. And of course, A/B tests, which helps you run those experiments and find out what kind of strategy actually works for you and what kind of metrics are important and key for you. Having all of this in mind, I will share what kind of action you can take using your Google Analytics first-party data that you've collected. And I would concentrate on three pillars. The first one, adjusting ad monetization. We are first-party engagement data. The second one, bridging spend data with revenue data to optimize profitability of your campaigns. And the third one, activating the best user experience depending on user engagement or skill, which helps you to increase your onboarding, retention, and engagement. And then it leads to higher revenue because of those pillars which influence your performance of the app. So let's imagine we have an abstract app. Most of the apps and games, they start like this. You have first open, which is automatic event. You have the tutorial. This one is more of a custom one, obviously. We have level complete, add impression, add reward. These are very standard events. Let's have a closer look in terms of the timeline of those events. We will see some events collected automatically by just implementation of the analytics SDK. Also collected, some of them are collected by manual implementation. It is very important to collect relevant events, so that's why I suggest you to use your common knowledge and the best practices for your specific game or app and implement those parts of the events that you track on your own. But the framework is this one. Understand what happens in the app, group users, and personalize their experience with regards to those events that you collect. This is your first-party data, which is super important. I think there are, like here you see 8 events, and even with those 8 events that you have, super little information, not very much of the data, you will be able to customize your experience and experience of your users a lot, and you will see lots of positive improvements of the performance. So first of all, we want to understand if the users are interacted, like with regards to the previous set that we saw. We want to understand what kind of users interact with rewarded ads and provide alternative for those who would not interact. In this case, this is the rewarded ad, but if you have some interstitials, whatever, any kind of, maybe it might be paywall, which might be an event that you want to track, you just split your audience depending on their engagement level with the rewarded ads or any other event which I mentioned. And there are various ways of achieving that, but I would like to briefly show you how to create your user audiences based on the first party data. It's pretty straightforward, and we can utilize the events that we collect to create meaningful user groups for targeting. In this view, you can see that we can use the inclusion criteria, so basically how many events counted with regards to ad reward, or we can use the exclusion criteria, which counts how many we didn't have of those events. In this case, we split the audience into two parts, and let's quickly see how the whole thing would work in action. So we collect the ad reward event, and at the end of the rewarded ad completion, then we split the audience into two parts, and with the help of remote config, we can deliver customized, let's say, customized experience to those batches of users that we have. So now we know that there are two batches of users. The one batch of users is using rewarded ads, and the normal, let's say, approach is delivered, so user will watch the rewarded ad unit. If not, we can complementary provide another format, another way how we can, and another approach how we still can monetize these users if they decide not to watch the rewarded ad. In this case, we can deliver rewarded interstitial ad unit, we can deliver another ad unit which might work well here, or paywall, or anything else which makes sense to you. So basically, we split the audience into two halves, and automatically every time we approach it with different configurations. And and we have a case with Mega Jogos. So this is Brazil-based studio. They noticed that a larger than expected number of new users of their game stopped playing after depleting the 35 coins that they had. It was just a soft currency. They were providing it for installing the app and completing the registration. So the folks, through the series of experiments and remote config, found the optimal number of the soft coins reward to give the users during the first open and during these events. And while they were trying to figure out and splitting those audiences, they were able to improve day one retention, and they grew up of their revenue for the rewarded ads and ad revenue in general grew up for 40%, which is them a lot. So now we can get deeper into the event parameters. This is the next level of first-party data that you should utilize. The first one was pretty straightforward and let's say first round of what you can do. The next one is more or less the same, but includes parameter values that you collect. We see that Google Ads pings back the name of the campaign of the users that we acquired. In this case, this is just the abstract name UICT2. Whatever. Second, we see how successful users are when they complete the level. In this game, let's imagine the maximum score users can achieve is 200, and we can say that our user is pretty successful taking into account the score. And we see how much of the reward they collected by the end of watching the rewarded ad. And lastly, we see the revenue value of ad impression provided by the served ad. This information is basically this information is basically sent back to Google Ads for calculating the return on investment when you are running a ROAS or TROAS campaign, which we did in this case. Sorry. Yeah, and having that information in mind, and knowing that this app has a hybrid monetization approach and strategy, as we want to diversify some income sources with a mix of the app purchases and ads revenue, knowing those different kind of campaigns that we have, we might split our audience and their experience into two parts. So let's say we have one campaign which is, let's say, focused on tier 2 countries, and which is focused on the ad revenue, and we have another campaign which is focused on the tier 1 countries. In this case, it will be USA only, and which is focused on in-app purchases. So having those two big categories in mind, we should not deliver the same experience for users who were acquired during those campaigns. Basically, if we target, let's say we are big in-app purchases and we focused only on in-app purchases, but we still drive some revenue via ad revenue, the experience for those users should be completely different. If you have NBUs countries like, I don't know, India, Brazil, where you cannot monetize on the same level, and you saw during today's presentations that the conversion level in those countries is completely different. So that's why in those countries you should go more heavy with the ads revenue, and you should increase either your ad density, formats mix that you use, or a variety or a complex of the things. And that is why you should actually differentiate those experiences, while in exactly the opposite case, you have the users who are focused on in-app purchases. For them, you should deliver more paywalls, remind them about buying stuff, remind them about buying some soft currencies, and then you will increase, let's say, experience, and your users will get the most out of your app or game if you separate their experiences. And the process looks very straightforward. We pin back first user campaign, we trigger first open event, Google Analytics define from what kind of campaign the users came from, then we use Firebase remote config, we split the audience into two parts. Those who came from the ARO campaign, they will see more ads, as I mentioned. You will customize their experience via adding more, let's say, banners, app opens, interstitials, rewardeds, any kind of formats. You show them more often. Any other strategy you define in order to optimize and monetize them more heavily. And for the other part of the users that you have, who are more of a focused on in-app purchases, you are showing more of the offerings in the shop. You are showing and highlighting uh, the paywalls in the app, and that's why you're just reminding them to buy more, and they have the other experience. And that's what we had with the Wave Studio. Basically, they split out the audience into two parts, and they were able to see 30% growth in ad revenue with AdMob and the ad revenue optimization feature, because they split the audience into two parts. And for the audience which were more heavy on ad revenue, they added additional ad unit. They were showing more natives, and only by this pretty simple and straightforward rollout with the help of Firebase, they were able to grow up more than 30%. Now we will add another level of the complexity for the first-party data, which will be user properties. And in this case, their difficulty levels. You can also able to collect that pretty easily. And the process would be looking very straightforward. For those users who you find the experience and difficulty very easy, you can customize their experience. We are setting up the automatic way for difficulty as high. So basically, after like three rounds of playing, you know that the user were able to achieve a specific score, let's say more than 180. And you know this is more than the average, let's say, experienced user that you have. That's why you should set up the difficulty for this user as high. So in this case, this user will be still engaged. It won't be too easy for them. And if the user was struggling to complete those three levels and the user is below average of success, if the user will keep struggling, basically he will or she will churn because of the fact that it's too hard to complete it. And for this user, after these three levels, you can automatically select the configuration to low, and basically user will be able to progress to the next round, or you can customize their experience and provide them reward or something else which will help them to basically to proceed and let's say extend the, I don't know, either the gaming length session or the you might increase the repetitive session during the day for this user, while you can send in-app different in-app rewards. Yeah, as I mentioned, you can do that in the Firebase remote config. You have default configuration, but if the player skill is low, you change the configuration. So this was the last concept, which probably some of the comprehensive studios, they take into account, and they do that on the custom, let's say custom mode, but everyone can do that with pretty straightforward approach and help of Firebase remote config and A/B tests. Once again, I will just repeat and summarize what you should focus. Check your first party data and understand how you can leverage the first party data. For sure, you will have some information that you do not utilize at the moment, but it is super helpful if you just pay attention and utilize this information. Then close the loop between user acquisition and monetization. So basically, if you target different campaigns for different users, but afterwards with those campaigns, you find that some of them are not successful, that might be the case, that they are not successful not because you are doing something wrong, your creatives don't work, but maybe you acquired the right users, but you didn't deliver them the right experience. And maybe for those users who acquired from specific campaigns should get the specific experience that they need. And in this case, you would not miss out those users. Yeah, as I mentioned before. Then the last one would be identify your top user audiences and personalize for their experience. That could be only 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 categories of users. But if you will deliver specific, let's say, experience for them in terms of the monetization strategy, in terms of the formats that you use, in terms of the complexity levels or design or any other complications for those users, that might be super helpful, and that might drive your profitability even forward. Taking into account privacy sandbox, having that information in mind, collecting that information, knowing your users better, and providing them the best experience you can provide, taking into account their characteristics, let's say, would help you to drive your profitability. Thanks a lot. Thank
Super.
you.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Do we have any questions? Nothing on Slido. Any live questions from the audience? Going once, twice. No. Okay.
Perfect.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.